It started with the little things, the kind you could easily miss or notice, but convince yourself not to. Her laugh changed. It sounded lighter, almost like it belonged to someone else, somewhere else. It wasn't the laugh she used when they watched comedies on Sunday nights. It was different, subtler, private. The first moment Mark really noticed something off was a Tuesday evening. She walked out of the bathroom, drying her hair with a towel, and her phone in her hand. "You took your phone into the shower?" he asked, half joking. She didn't flinch, just smiled and said, "I was listening to a podcast." But something in her voice rang off-key. And that's when it started, the spiral of small things. She came home later than usual, wore perfume even when she was just meeting a friend. Her phone never left her side. Literally never. Not at dinner, not when they watched TV, not even when she was brushing her teeth. She would zone out sometimes, eyes staring at nothing, like she was daydreaming somewhere far from their kitchen, their house, their life. "How was your day?" he asked one evening when she walked in, cheeks flushed, perfume strong. "Same as always," she said quickly, too quickly. Kissed him on the cheek, a kiss that felt more like routine than affection. That night, he heard her voice through the bedroom door. She was on the phone, hushed, but clear enough. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. It's fine." It froze him, not like a scream, more like the cold grip of realization crawling down his spine. He didn't confront her, not then. He just stood there in the hallway, heart pounding like a war drum. Something cracked inside him that night. It didn't shatter, not yet, but it cracked. And once something cracks, you start to see everything differently. Mark didn't sleep much that night. He lay there with his eyes open, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing beside him. She looked peaceful, serene even, and he hated that, because he wasn't. His mind was on fire, replaying that one sentence over and over. No, he doesn't suspect anything. It didn't prove anything, technically, but it was enough. Enough to shift him into a different mode, from trusting husband to quiet observer. Over the next few days, he started to notice a pattern. She laughed more often, but rarely at anything he said. She got new lingerie, not the kind she wore for him. He hadn't seen it on her, only found the tags in the trash. Her text tone would go off in the middle of dinner, and she'd glance at her phone with this almost nervous smile, then excuse herself, every time. He began keeping track, mentally at first. She worked late every Thursday now. She always showered right when she got home. She started locking her phone, and worst of all, she seemed happy. Not happy in their marriage, not happy with him, happy in some secret glowing way he no longer had access to. One Friday night, he pretended to be asleep. She crept out of bed at 11:40, took her phone, sat in the hallway, whispered for almost an hour. When she came back, she slipped under the covers as if nothing had happened. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at the ceiling, heart hollowing out with every breath she took. That weekend, he started doing something he never imagined he would. He checked her phone while she was in the shower, password protected. He stared at the lock screen for a full minute. She used to trust him with everything. Now he couldn't even guess her passcode. He stood there, motionless, with the phone in his hand, and knew, even without proof. You don't need evidence when someone's already left the room emotionally. You just feel it. It happened the following Thursday. She said she had a team dinner, a networking thing, she called it. She wore heels, did her hair in a way she hadn't for months, sprayed perfume like it was the first date, and Mark stood there, watching from the hallway, arms folded. "You look nice," he said. "Thanks," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "What's the guy's name?" Silence. She froze mid-step, then turned slowly, her face carefully blank. "What?" "The guy," he said, voice calm, maybe too calm. "The one you've been texting late at night, whispering to in the hallway, the one who doesn't know I know. She blinked, once, twice, then gave a soft, almost pitying smile. Mark, don't do this. But he wasn't backing down. How long? She sighed and looked down at the floor. Her fingers clenched her purse tighter. It's not like that. He laughed, a bitter, tired laugh. It's exactly like that. She looked up then, and her eyes weren't angry. They weren't defensive. They were sad. And that somehow hurt more. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said. It just did. I was lonely, Mark. Lonely? He asked, voice rising. We live in the same house, sleep in the same bed. And you're lonely? She nodded slowly. I don't feel seen. I haven't for a long time. And I'm not blaming you. I'm not. I needed to feel alive again. Her voice cracked. She was crying now. But Mark couldn't move, couldn't speak. He felt like the floor had dropped beneath him. Somewhere in the distance, a car honked. A dog barked. The world went on. And in the middle of his own kitchen, Mark stood completely still, realizing nothing would ever be the same again. That night, Mark slept on the couch. Or rather, he tried to. But sleep doesn't come easy when the life you thought you had just cracked open like a fault line. The silence in the house was unbearable. Not just quiet, empty. It was the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears and drowns out your own thoughts. He kept replaying her words. I needed to feel alive again. As if being with him had been some kind of slow death. Every look they'd shared, every holiday, every late-night movie on the couch. Was that all just routine to her? Background noise to a life she no longer wanted? He felt a mixture of things, none of them clean. First was rage, hot, immediate, primal. He wanted to scream, break things, text the guy, find out who he was, demand answers, demand respect. But then, under the rage, came something worse, grief. The kind you feel when someone dies, except they're still breathing in the next room. Because it was a kind of death. The death of the version of his life where he was enough, where she loved him and only him. He kept thinking back to the little moments, the time she made him soup when he was sick, the way she used to dance while brushing her teeth, the way she'd rest her head on his chest and trace circles with her finger. Had she stopped doing that? When? Why hadn't he noticed? He felt stupid, blindsided, but also responsible? Was it his fault? Had he pulled away first without realizing? He didn't know anymore. Everything felt blurry. Every memory was now tinted with doubt. And the worst part? She didn't beg him to stay. She didn't say it was over either. She just went to bed like it was any other night, as if they were both waiting to see what would happen next. In the days that followed, Mark moved through life like he was watching it from underwater. Everything sounded muffled. Everything felt far away. He went to work, answered emails, picked up groceries, but inside, he was unraveling. Quietly, methodically. He didn't bring it up again. Neither did she. They existed in the same house like two actors in a play with no lines, eating dinner in silence, scrolling through their phones, avoiding eye contact like it might set off a bomb. And in that silence, Mark started asking questions, not to her, but to himself. Was I really that absent? Did I stop seeing her, loving her the way she needed? Did I somehow create the space where this other man fit in? He thought about how often he had said, I love you, out of habit. How many times he'd canceled date nights because of work. How often he chose distraction, sports, Netflix, phone, over presence. He remembered a moment 6 months ago. She was trying to show him a new dress she'd bought. He glanced up from his laptop, said, looks good, and went back to typing. She had gone quiet after that. Had it started then? Mark didn't want to let her off the hook. She'd lied, cheated, hidden pieces of her life from him. But it wasn't as simple as villain and victim anymore. It was messier than that, realer. Because somewhere along the way, love had turned into something else. a rhythm, a routine. And when no one's paying attention, routines become walls. He wasn't sure if he wanted to forgive her. He wasn't even sure if he deserved forgiveness either. All he knew was this: whatever came next, it had to be real. No more pretending, no more silence. And for the first time in days, Mark reached for his phone, not to snoop, not to run, but to message his therapist. They didn't fight. That was the strange part. No screaming, no thrown plates, no dramatic breakdowns in the hallway, just this haunting quiet, like the pause before thunder. Mark kept to himself. So did she. They slept in the same house, but not in the same bed. She started sleeping in the guest room. No words exchanged. It just happened. They were ghosts walking past each other, sharing a kitchen, a mortgage, a fading history. Mark had always thought cheating would come with chaos, a hurricane of drama. But in real life, it was slow erosion, not a collapse, but a quiet crumbling. She started cooking for one. He stopped saying, "Good morning." And yet, there were moments that felt so normal, it made him want to scream. One evening, she laughed at a meme on her phone and instinctively turned to show him, only to freeze halfway, remember, and look away. Another night, he made too much pasta by accident and placed a bowl in front of her without thinking. She hesitated, then said a soft, "Thank you." That bowl of pasta broke him more than any fight ever could, because it meant they still had something. Not love, not trust, but history, familiarity, the ache of what used to be. And in those quiet days, Mark realized something. He didn't want to stay just because it was easier, but he also didn't want to leave out of pride. He wanted to understand. He wanted clarity, not revenge, not punishment, just the truth, stripped of excuses, fear, or guilt. So one night, he said it. "I want to talk." She looked up from her book, eyes wary, guarded. "About what?" He took a deep breath. "Everything." They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. No music, no wine, just 2 mugs of untouched tea and 10 years of silence waiting to be broken. Mark didn't come in with a speech prepared. He didn't want to perform. He just wanted answers, even if they hurt. "How long?" he asked. She looked down. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the mug. "A few months," she whispered. He nodded slowly. Not surprised, but still gutted, like hearing the doctor confirm what you already suspected. "Is it still going on?" A beat of hesitation, then, "No." Another beat, then softer. "I ended it 2 weeks ago." Mark stared at her, not with anger, with disbelief. "Why?" She hesitated, then met his eyes. "Because I realized I didn't want him. I just wanted to feel wanted. And I thought he could give me that. But all it did was make me feel emptier." The words stung, but they were honest. And that counted for something. "And me?" Mark asked. "What about us?" She closed her eyes. Her voice trembled. "I don't know. I'm sorry, Mark. I really am. I've been lost for a long time, and I didn't know how to say it." He swallowed hard. "You could have told me." "I tried," she said, "in 100 ways, but maybe I wasn't loud enough, or maybe you just weren't listening." That hit like a slap, because it was true. Somewhere in between bills and work and Netflix and the same 3 dinners a week, he stopped listening, and so did she. They sat in silence after that, not cold, just exhausted. 2 people at the end of a road, neither of them remembered choosing. But the weirdest part? The honesty, for all its pain, felt like oxygen. It didn't fix anything, but it was real. Finally. And that was a start. They didn't come to a conclusion that night. There were no grand decisions, no ultimatums, no one stormed out. But something had shifted. The truth was out now, exposed, raw, and uncomfortable. It sat between them like a third presence at the table, refusing to be ignored. Over the next few days, Mark kept waiting for clarity to arrive, like a package on the doorstep. But it didn't. Instead, there was a question that kept circling in his head, over and over. Can love survive betrayal? Not the kind you see in movies, but real betrayal. The kind that happens between people who still sleep in the same house, still share a laundry basket, still know how the other takes their coffee. He caught her crying in the bathroom one morning. The door was cracked open. She thought he wasn't awake yet. He didn't say anything, just walked away, because he didn't know if he was ready to comfort her or if he even should. They started doing something strange, being polite. Do you want coffee? Thanks, I'll make mine. I'm picking up groceries. Need anything? It was surreal, civil, number, like they were co-workers after a bad office party. But under that politeness, something was building, a slow pressure. Because no matter how calm things looked on the surface, the reality was simple. They couldn't keep going like this. And one night, as they sat in the living room watching a movie neither of them was actually watching, she said it. Maybe we should take a break. Mark didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just looked at her. And for the first time in weeks, she looked back. Really looked. He nodded once. Not in anger, not in defeat, but in surrender to the truth. Sometimes love needs space to breathe, even if it hurts like hell. Mark moved out on a Sunday. No dramatic exit, no slammed doors, just a duffel bag, his laptop, and a half-hearted joke about needing better pillows. He checked into a short-term rental across town. A small place, one bedroom, barely furnished. It smelled like bleach and emptiness. The silence there was different, not tense like at home, just quiet. He didn't unpack much, left his things in the bag. Maybe, deep down, he didn't want it to feel permanent. The first few days felt like floating. There were no fights, no awkward dinners, no walking on eggshells, but also no routine, no shared coffee, no hum of another person moving through the same space. He caught himself setting 2 plates for breakfast on Monday morning. Old habits die slowly. He still texted her. Nothing deep, just updates. Forgot my headphones. Might swing by after work. Your mom called the landline. I told her you'd call back. She replied with the same surface calm. Thanks. Okay. There were no emojis, no warmth, just sentences that did their job. And yet, there was relief too. A strange, aching kind of relief. No more pretending, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just 2 people, apart, trying to remember who they were without each other. Mark went for long walks at night, not to clear his head, that was a lost cause, but because being still felt unbearable. He'd look into the windows of other people's homes, glowing rectangles of normalcy, and wonder, do they know how lucky they are? Or are they too quietly falling apart behind closed doors? Sometimes he wished she'd call. Other times, he prayed she wouldn't. He wasn't sure what he wanted, just that whatever this was, this space, this stillness, it was necessary, even if it hurt. She didn't cry when he left. Not then. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching him quietly zip his bag. He looked at her once, as if waiting for her to stop him. She didn't. But the second the door clicked shut, the tears came. Not loud, not theatrical, just silent rivers that soaked into her sweater sleeves. She wandered the house like a stranger, opened drawers, sat on the edge of the bed, looked at old photos she hadn't touched in years. They were happy once, not perfect, but real. The guilt didn't hit all at once. It crept in slowly. In the moments she reached for her phone and realized there was no one to text. In the silence at dinner that used to be filled with his terrible jokes. In the way her own reflection looked back at her with something like shame. The man she'd cheated with, he was long gone now. She hadn't even answered his last message, because she finally understood. It was never about him. He was just the mirror, the distraction. the excuse to avoid facing herself. She missed Mark, but it wasn't just about missing the routines or the comfort. She missed being known, really known, even when he didn't always get it right. And for the first time, she realized something brutal. She had wanted out, but she hadn't wanted gone. There's a difference. Out is escape. Gone is loss. And now, she wasn't sure if there was a way back. Not because he hated her, but because maybe, deep down, he was learning to live without her. She sat on the couch that night, wrapped in one of his old sweatshirts, staring at the empty spot beside her, and whispered into the quiet, "What did I do?" It was a Thursday. Gray sky, cold coffee, inbox overflowing. Just another forgettable day. Mark was sitting at his laptop, halfway through an email he didn't care about, when his phone buzzed. Her name. For a second, he just stared at the screen. They hadn't spoken in 5 days. Not a text, not a call. Radio silence. He hesitated, thumb hovering, then answered. "Hey." Her voice was small, almost unfamiliar. "Hi." A beat of silence, not tense, just uncertain. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said quickly. I was going to text, but I didn't know if that felt too impersonal." "It's fine," he said. Another pause. Neither of them sure where to start. She finally spoke. "I saw that movie you told me about, the one with the weird ending." He blinked. "That was months ago." "Yeah? What did you think?" "I hated it, but it made me think of you." That made him smile. Not a full smile, just a flicker. A memory. They talked for 7 minutes. About nothing. And everything. Movies. Weather. The dog next door that still barked at shadows. No mention of the affair. No mention of the break. Just two voices remembering how to talk again. Before they hung up, she said it, almost in a whisper. "I miss you." Mark didn't know what to say, because he missed her too. But missing someone doesn't erase the mess. Still, before the line went dead, he said, "Thanks for calling." And he meant it. Not because it solved anything, but because in a world of slammed doors, that phone call felt like a crack of light. They didn't rush it. There was no dramatic reunion, no teary embrace in the rain, no "I made a mistake" scene straight out of a movie. Just small steps. After the call, they started texting again, sometimes once a day, sometimes nothing for 2, but the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like space, not distance. One evening, she sent a photo of their cat curled up in his hoodie. He replied with a laugh emoji. 2 words, "She misses me." That was how it started. Laughter, one message at a time. Then came the first coffee. She suggested it. Neutral ground. A quiet cafe halfway between her work and his rental. They sat outside. No pressure, no expectations. She looked nervous. He did too. They talked about books, work, her mom's upcoming surgery, things that mattered, but not too much. No landmines. Until she looked down, fidgeting with her cup, and said, "You look tired." Mark gave a tired smile. "I am." She nodded, eyes soft. "Me too." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't romance. It was 2 people remembering what being human together felt like. After that, they started seeing each other once a week. Walks, coffee, no sleepovers, no labels, just presence. There was still pain, still trust to rebuild, but also the beginnings of something else, something real, something honest. It wasn't what they used to have. It was quieter, slower. But maybe that was the point. Sometimes love isn't about starting over. It's about starting differently. It happened by accident. Mark had come by to fix the leaky kitchen faucet, something they'd both been avoiding. She wasn't home, left a key under the mat. They were in that weird middle place, not back together, not apart, just existing in a careful rhythm. After tightening the valve, he noticed a pile of papers on the kitchen table. Mail, bills, an open notebook. He wasn't snooping. At least that's what he told himself. but one page was half folded, with his name at the top. Mark, just that. No greeting, no date, but the handwriting was hers. He hesitated, picked it up. She hadn't meant to give it to him. That much was obvious, but once he read the first line, he couldn't stop. If I could say this out loud, I would, but I know I'd mess it up, so I'm writing it instead. His eyes moved quickly now, heart tight in his chest. You didn't deserve what I did. You didn't make me cheat. That was me. My brokenness. My fear of being invisible. You were stable, kind, present, but I couldn't see it through the fog of my own restlessness. And now, you're gone, but somehow still here, and I hate that I miss you the way I do. If you never want to forgive me, I'll understand, but I hope someday you'll believe me when I say, I loved you through it all, even in the ugliest parts. I just didn't know how to love myself. Mark sat down. Hard. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that fills your lungs with something heavy. It wasn't the apology that shook him. It was the truth of it. She wasn't just sorry. She understood what she'd done. Not to him, but to them. He folded the letter slowly. Didn't text her. Didn't mention it. Not yet. But something had shifted. Forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. But for the first time, it felt possible. She didn't know he'd read the letter. When she came home that evening, she found him sitting on the back steps, watching the sky change color. Sunset was folding the day into soft golds and oranges. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. He didn't turn when she walked up, didn't say anything. She sat beside him without asking. For a long moment, they just breathed the same air. Then, I didn't mean for you to see that, she said quietly. He nodded. I figured. Another pause. She tucked her hands into her sleeves. You mad? He thought about that. He had been. Furious even. But right now? No, he said. Not mad. She looked surprised, relieved, but also uncertain. He finally turned toward her. I don't know what this is going to look like. United States, or not us. She nodded. Me neither. A breeze moved between them. Not cold, just real. But, he continued, I want to try. I'm not promising forever. I'm not even promising tomorrow. He took a slow breath. I'm just saying, I'm willing to leave the door half open, if you are. Her eyes welled, not dramatic tears, just enough to blur the edges of the world. She didn't speak. She just leaned her head against his shoulder, software hesitant. And they sat like that, shoulder to shoulder, past sunset. No labels, no decisions, just two people choosing, quietly, to be here. Not because it was easy, but because healing, like love, begins in the small moments, moments like this one. It didn't end in fireworks, or vows, or sweeping declarations of forever. Some days they talked, some days they didn't. Some days felt like progress, others like walking in circles. But they kept showing up. Therapy sessions, walks with no destination, late-night calls that ended in silence but meant something anyway. They didn't move back in together right away. They needed time. Time to become whole on their own before choosing whether to become something together again. There were hard moments, triggers, flashbacks, nights when Mark would roll over in bed, feel the emptiness beside him, and wonder if forgiveness was weakness. But then there were other nights, when she'd send him a photo of something funny at the grocery store, or leave a voice memo just to say, I heard your laugh today in my head, and it made me miss you. And over time, he realized she wasn't perfect, neither was he. But maybe that's what love is, not some flawless fairy tale certainty, but the willingness to look at someone, bruised, messy, deeply human, and still say, you matter to me, even now. One morning, months later, she invited him over for breakfast. No reason, no pressure, just 2 cups of coffee, pancakes she overcooked, and a quiet moment in the kitchen where they looked at each other and smiled. Not the smile of new love, but the kind that comes after the storm, the kind that says, "We're still here, not perfect, not fixed, but real." And sometimes that's enough.